Broncos country, my high salute, baby. Your Denver Broncos are a playoff team. They clinched a playoff berth. Was it a couple weeks late? Maybe. They made us wait a little bit, but good things come to those who wait, man. Nothing like clinching at home, wearing those fresh uniforms against a divisional opponent. You got to love it. And what we're going to talk about today is we're going to look at all the different personnel decisions and events that led to this moment happening and why the Denver Broncos are a playoff team really 2 years earlier than I think most of us anticipated. So let's get into that. Before we do, welcome to the channel, everybody. If it's your first time, I appreciate you. If you love Denver sports, especially the Denver Broncos, hit that subscribe button below. Like the video, interact with me in the comments, man. It is a great time to be a Broncos fan, so let's get right to it. All right, guys, well, let's look back, all right? Let's look back to last season. The Broncos on Christmas Eve lost a heartbreaking game that they absolutely had no business losing to the New England Patriots that essentially eliminated them from playoff contention. And it was the last game that Russell Wilson played for the Denver Broncos, obviously, as we all know. And then they ended up in the offseason making the decision. A lot of people thought it was a crazy decision. I was all on board. When we lost that New England game, I said, I don't care what the cost is. Stop it. Get rid of it. Let's rebuild this thing. Let's rebuild it the right way. Sean Payton agreed. He said, I'm going to eat the $88 million because it's just not going to work. Plus, what people also don't really understand is that had they kept them, they would have owed not just $88 million in dead cap. It would have been an additional $40 million that would have triggered in this last March. So it would have been over $120 million in dead cap that you're essentially going to eat. Broncos decided, you know what, we're going to eat it. We're going to start over. We're going to go to the bargain bin, build this team up with core guys, with some depth players, and most importantly, with some guys that fit into this locker room and fit into what Sean Payton was trying to build. And so that's really where it starts, right? It began in free agency, guys, with being able to find players that could be immediate contributors, starting caliber players that were just solid overall, right? That really helped build the guts of this team, the foundation of this team. Some guys we don't really talk about too much on a week-to-week basis, but they had a really big part in this turnaround and contributing to this team. And that starts with the free agency class of last year, right? You look at a guy like Brandon Jones. Now, I was optimistic. I liked the Brandon Jones signing when it first happened, but I did not think he was going to be a borderline upgrade over Justin Simmons. Love what he brought. Thought that he just brings a unique element to this team. A lot of fire. Really, really good player overall. And then guys like Malcolm Roach, right? Not a sexy signing at the time, but you start hearing a lot of these words about potential. And man, Malcolm Roach has been such a key contributor to this team. He plays a lot of snaps on defense. He's amazing at stopping the run. He's really helped turn this defense around, especially from the standpoint of being much better against the run. And overall, that's made us a significantly better defense, right? And you had a lot of other contributors like that came from free agency, but we definitely went into the bargain bin for a lot of these guys, right? I mean, you ended up getting Josh Reynolds, who I liked at the time. He didn't end up working out for several different reasons. Obviously, getting shot doesn't really help. So happy that he was okay, and then he's found a new home elsewhere. And then, bringing back key guys, right? Bringing back Adam Troutman, who's somebody who's I think is a leader on this team. Bringing back Will Lutz, being able to get him last minute. He signed with the Jags, ended up coming back to Denver. Ended up being a huge signing for us because he's been as solid as it gets in terms of what you want out of your kicker. You look at all the kicking problems that teams are having across the league. It don't happen with Will Lutz. So loved having him back. Justin Sternad did the same thing. He also did a 360, came back to Denver too. And Justin Sternad was brought back because he was an elite special teamer. But even though he's had his moments of weakness on defense, especially over the last month or so, man, he was playing some really, really good football for a long time. And he ends up being, a really solid overall player for this team. So it's a lot of it is about the guys that you ended up bringing back, where you look back and you're like, you know what, man, I'm really happy that we have that guy. Cody Barton stepped right into the role. Unbelievable. He's played really, really well at times. Obviously, not a perfect player, but really was surprised by his game, especially with their ability to overcome the Alex Singleton injury. Imagine if we still had him. Man, my goodness. But, his injury, we ended up overcoming a lot of that. It was great. And so there was that, right? But it really all started in the draft, right? And we talked about this so much. I do not care who you draft, how talented the person is. If you have committed fully to a rebuild, right? You've made the full commitment that we're going to rebuild this and we're going to do it the right way. Nothing matters until you have the quarterback. Therefore, you have to take a quarterback that you want. And kudos to Sean Payton and George Payton, man. They did such a great job of doing their homework on all of these guys, identifying their top prospects, right? Getting a good idea of like, okay, they Sean Payton likes Bo Nix. They have a vision for this player. They studied the kind of the landscape of the market, what other teams were going to do, what they needed to do in the draft. They ultimately decided that they could just stay put. It was a little bit risky, but they did, and they ended up making the draft pick. And it all really changed from them. They did a great job with the draft as a whole, getting a lot of really key contributors, man. And Jonah Ellis, I really like the kind of player he's going to be. And Chris Abrams, Drain, and Audric Estime, obviously Devon Vele, guys that are not only, many of them contributed right away, but they also have very, very bright futures, I believe, ahead of them. They fit exactly into the culture and exactly what it is that we do. And that's really where the turnaround began. When you ended up getting your franchise quarterback. And then, you lead it, you look at the rest of the season, right? Or the rest of the offseason, the way that the offseason kind of progressed, going into minicamp, OTAs, all that. And, we talked about it on the channel a lot. This is going to be an extremely important year of developmental year. That's going to be the big key here. Because when you're taking on, $50+ million in dead cap money this year, and you couldn't really go out there and get a lot of free agents. You let some of your free agents go, and Christian Berry and Josie Jewell. It became all about developing not just your rookies, but some of your second year guys, especially, right? Some of the guys that didn't play it a lot or struggled or didn't play really at all last year. And so when you look through that list, it was Riley Moss, it was Marvin Mims, right? Those are the two that really pop out the most in terms of the previous draft year. And then obviously Jaleel McLaughlin as an undrafted guy in his second year. I mean, you got a lot of these secondary contributors coming up. And it was all about developing those guys. And man, kudos to them. That's exactly what they did. They really built this team from the ground out. It was very organic. And, Courtland Sutton, I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch his post-game presser today, but unbelievably insightful. And so happy for him just to be able to taste the playoffs for the first time in his career. But he talked about, they asked him, when did you really feel like this team was going to be a lot better than everyone predicted? And he said, without hesitation, it was during the joint practices against the Green Bay Packers. He said, Jordan Love had just come off signing a really big agreement. We're out there. Defense is balling up against them. Bo Nix is, basically going tit for tat with somebody like a Jordan Love, as a rookie so early in his career. He had also mentioned that there was a 2-minute drill that he just absolutely executed to perfection. And it was still so early, before the season even started. And he just felt it. He said, we all really felt like it was something special with Bo, and that this defense was going to be really special as well, just given how they ended up practicing and playing against, a really good Green Bay team that made a playoff push the year before. I mean, made it to the NFC Championship game, or almost to the divisional. They were like a play from the NFC Championship game. So it's I find that interesting to get that perspective, because I remember the Broncos having those joint practices, and they won the practice and it was good, and I was just really happy that we didn't end up like getting our ass kicked like past teams did. And then they ended up following it up and dominating them in the actual game too, even though the Packers didn't ultimately play a lot of their I don't think they played any starters in that game. But anyways, and so that kind of spurred something really, really good. And then, the season goes on, man. We don't need to go. I don't want to bore you guys with just going game by game. But you just look at the growth overall, right? Obviously, it's always going to start with the quarterback. You're always going to start with Bo Nix. But the growth of all these other players around them, all the youth, man. Like, even look at Wattenberg stepping in at center. Has he been perfect? No. But he's gotten progressively better throughout the year. And then he goes down for a few games. Alex Forsythe comes in. We don't bat an eye. In fact, you can make the argument that it's better. Mike McGlinchey misses, a month. Alex Polcheski comes in, fills in, looks unbelievable. He looks like he's ready to go. And then, you start fishing. The wide receiver room is kind of struggling. Cortland Sutton has always been playing really consistent, but there was really no one else stepping up. And then you start to see the potential. Josh Reynolds goes down, but then you start seeing what Devon Bailey can do, right? You start seeing those small little flashes of Troy Franklin. And Troy Franklin, I'm still a little bit bearish on him. I think he's fine, but he's going to have to make a huge leap. Because although we saw a big leap from Marvin Mims, year 1 and year 2, you saw a lot more special traits in Marvin Mims in his first season that you kind of knew. Troy Franklin's one of those guys where he's a little bit of a one-trick pony. And so he's going to have to – he has a lot of growth to do. But he's a young kid, bro. He's only 21 years old, so it is what it is. But you kind of started seeing those young players really flash and start to make plays. And then, the veteran tight ends were – our tight end group was by no means good, but they were making enough plays when we needed to. We started being better on third downs. We didn't really have a good run game. We kind of beat that up a lot. So we start to come into the zone a little bit with the backs and all that. And the offense was always kind of makeshift. It's still as present day, very much a work in progress. I still think that there's a lot of juice and talent that you can add to it. But man, carrying us through that really rough stretch, especially for the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season, the defense was out of its mind good. I don't think anybody anticipated the defense to play as well as it did. And that's kudos to players like Nick Bonito, right? Who very deservingly got a Pro Bowl nod. Unbelievable step he's taken this year. Pat Surtain, obviously a stud. Riley Moss has shown crazy growth from year 1 to year 2. The addition of Brandon Jones, I think, was huge. Then you just go down the line, right? Zach Allen has really taken his game to another level. I thought he was really solid last year. I think he was phenomenal this year. The addition of John Franklin Myers, right? Doesn't always pop off on the stat sheet, but my God, he takes on so many double teams. He makes the jobs of the edge players so much easier. And it's the reason why this team broke a team record this year with 62 sacks. That is absurd. And we've only given up 23 sacks because Bo Nix does a good job. So it's those little things that you look at and you say, man, that's really where you take the next step. That's where you start to play next level. When you have a defense that was really good, obviously they've had their blunders over the last few weeks. But when you're looking at it as a whole, the defense was out of its mind, phenomenal this year, extremely opportunistic, very, very good with turnovers and turning the ball over and all that good stuff. It makes life on the rookie quarterback so much easier. And, it starts at the top. It really does. I mean, we talked about when it started, but it all starts from the top. It's the reason that these people got a game ball after today's game, and that's the ownership group. The Walton Penner group has been unbelievable. I've always said it. The Broncos will not be relevant in the NFL until we get an ownership group. A lot of people thought that's weird. Why? It's not like the ownership has that much to do with on-field product. Absolutely, they do. When you create a culture of, making every player, like if the players need something, you give it to them. If they want the top of the line equipment, the top of the line food, the top of the line products, facilities, travel, anything. They want it top of the line, they get it. They provide it. They want the best quality field and turf for the players to play in, they get it. They're working on a huge practice facility now. A stadium is going to be in the works in the next few years. And then they give the autonomy for George Paton and Sean Payton to be able to go out there and spend the money, make the moves that they deem necessary for the team. Open checkbook, no problem. It's huge. It's absolutely huge. It completely changed the culture of this team. And then, you look at all the midseason signings that we did. I mean, guys, that is so imperative to building a culture and making this a place where people want to play. We, just a few years ago under John Elway's leadership, because he has, his last few years of his tenure were terrible. He would refuse to sign his own guys, and he's always tried to go out there and get the new shining toy. That has completely changed. And it really started with George Paton. I mean, even before when he had some hiccups and before the ownership group, he did a good job of really re-signing his own and building it up from the inside out. But man, to re-sign Quinn Miners, to re-sign Garrett Bowles, to re-sign Patrick Surtain, to re-sign Jonathan Cooper, all during the season, amazing, unbelievable. Not only is it great to invest in your core players, but think about the message that it sends to other guys, right? And then, it inspires them to want to play well. It inspires them to want to continue being a Bronco because they know if they go out there and they perform, they're going to get rewarded. I think that was huge. It was absolutely huge. So very well deserved. I want to know what you guys think. What are your reasons why you feel like the Broncos made the playoffs? Who are your MVPs? Give me your list below. I want to talk with y'all about it. I'm really curious, but there's so much. There's so much. I don't want to make this an hour-long video, but that's kind of my 2 cents of all the contributing factors that I think led to this moment. But Broncos country, y'all deserve it, man. Enjoy this. Enjoy it for real. But enjoy it with the people that you love the most. Spend time with them. We will have a ton of videos as we look forward to the Buffalo Bills. But until then, enjoy it. Go Broncos, baby, and peace out.